Hello. In this exercise, I will walk you through a company issuing bonds, paying interest semi-annually, and retiring the bonds early. So let's start with exercise 911. On January 1st, 2024, Splash City issues $500,000 9% bonds that are due in 20 years. They will pay interest semi-annually on June 30th and December 31st. In this exercise, we've been asked to assume that the market interest rate on the date of issue is 10% and the bonds issue at 457,102. Specifically, we've been asked to complete the first three rows of the amortization schedule and to do the journal entries on January 1st, June 30th, and December 31st, all in the first year, 2024. So here's how I'd walk you through this problem. My recommendation always is pick up all the information that you need from here and write those down separately. So here I start out with saying that I have $500,000. That's the principal amount the company is borrowing. I being the company, I'm borrowing $500,000. The next thing is I paid, or the bond issue price, the money I received. The bondholders gave me, the investors gave me this much money, 457,102. So I put this information from first piece of information is over here, the face value, and how much money I got, that's the next piece of information. Now the next important piece of information is when am I going to return the principal? 20 years from now. So this 20 years is the term of the bond. The term of the bond means the life of the bond. In 20 years, at the end of 20 years, I'll have to return that money. Now, I'm going to pay interest semi-annually. So the number of interest payments I'm going to make is 40. That is 20 multiplied by 2. 2 times a year, that gives me 40 interest payments. Next piece of information I need is the bond interest rate. That's 9%. Now, interest rate always is stated annually. So the annual interest rate is 9%. I'm not going to pay 9% interest every 6 months. What I will pay is 4.5% every 6 months for a total of 9% for the year. So the number of periods I multiplied by 2 to get the number of interest payments. The interest rate I divide by 2 to find out how much I need to pay every 6 months. Now, the last piece of information I need to pull from here is the market interest rate. This is relevant only at the time of issue, this 10%. So the market interest rate is 10%. Again, that's the annual interest rate. So the semi-annual market interest rate at the time of issue is 5%. Obviously, I need all of this information to complete parts 1 and parts 2, the 2 parts of this exercise. The market interest rate is more than what I'm offering, which is why I sold the bonds at a discount. A discount is basically a loss. We use the word discount over here, discount on bonds payable. We've issued the bonds at a loss. That amount will be amortized over the life of the bonds. The amortization schedule, we're looking at amortizing that discount over the life of the bonds. So here's what I'm going to do. I have all the information to start my journal entry, and that's in part 2, the first one, record the bond issue on Jan 1st, 2024. I have all the information for that, so let me go ahead and put that information in place first. On January 1st, I'm the company, I received cash. The cash I received, I know exactly what the amount is. I received 457,102. On this day, I signed the contract. The contract is for $500,000. I asked for $500,000. I will pay interest on $500,000 and I will return $500,000. I didn't get $500,000, but that's a different story. So the amount, the difference that we have over here is the discount on bonds payable. It's a loss. I got less money than I asked for. That's because the interest rate I'm offering is lower than the market interest rate. So I have my first journal entry done. Now I need to work on my second journal entry, which is going to be on June 30th. On June 30th, as far as the bondholders are concerned, they need to get their check in the mail. The check they're expecting is this $500,000. They're going to get 4.5% of that. So let me do this, setting up the schedule, show you how I have it, and then you'll also see how you can do the journal entries quite easily. So here what I have is, I'm going to label the columns so I can explain what I have in each of these columns. The first one obviously is the cash that I'm paying. I'm going to pay cash 40 times. So cash paid, I'm going to run. Second is the bond interest expense. Third is the amortization, how much I'm going to write off that discount. Every time I pay interest, I'm going to write off some of that discount. And finally, the carrying value, ending balance. So this number keeps changing. So I start with t equals 0 or time equals 0, basically saying, what's the starting point? The starting point is how much cash I receive. This number that you see over here, this number is what you will see over here as well. The carrying value on the date of issue is the amount of cash I receive. In this case, it's less than the face value. My first interest payment is going to be on June 30th. Okay, so let me go with the information I need over here. So on June 30th, how do I calculate the interest? Principal amount, which is 500,000, multiplied by the semi-annual interest rate, which is 4.5%. So cash paid is 22,500. That number is going to stay the same for 40 interest payments. That number is not going to change. This one stays exactly the same all the way through. So for the first and the second interest payments, it's going to be 22,500. Again, that's calculated as 500,000 the principal multiplied by the semi-annual bond interest rate. 500,000 times 4.5%. That's how much cash I'm paying. In my journal entry, cash, I'm paying cash. That's all the bondholders are concerned with. They get the check in the mail. The rest of it is my book entry. Now, bond interest expense. This is the next thing I have here, bond interest expense. Bond interest expense is always calculated as the previous carrying value multiplied by the semi-annual market interest rate. Now note over here, we're looking at semi-annual market. I'm looking at semi-annual market rate. I pay interest based on my bond interest rate. This calculation is market interest rate. So the previous carrying value is this number that I have here that I highlighted in blue. This number multiplied by 5%, semi-annual market interest rate. So 457,102 multiplied by 5% will give me the bond interest expense. That's the bond interest expense number. Okay. Now the next is the amortization. I can explain this one of two ways. The amortization is this number, the discount is being written off. Discount on bonds payable has a debit balance. Therefore, to write it off, I need to credit it. Another way in which you can look at this is, look at your journal entry. Your debits are more than your credits right now. Therefore, you need to credit. That balancing figure 355.10 is just a difference between these two numbers. So the amortization, that what I have in column C, is bond interest expense minus cash paid. Bond interest expense minus cash paid will tell me the amortization, what it should be. Now, the final question we have is, what should I do with this amortization? I'm writing off the bond discount. The discount on bonds payable, I'm writing it off. So how does it affect my carrying value? Again, we can do this in a couple different ways. Oops, I altered this line here. I can do this a couple different ways. Here, what we will do is take the previous carrying value add the amortization. I add the amortization. I'm going to add it. Same thing for the next period. This is going to be on December 31st. The accounts are going to be the same. What else is the same? The cash paid, that's not going to change. 40 payments, they're going to stay the same. Bond interest expense, now you take this number and multiply it by, you take this number and multiply it by 5%, not the previous number. So not this number, but now this new number, new carrying value, multiply that by 5%. And what you'll notice is that bond interest expense is higher. The reason it's higher is because the carrying value is higher. So my new carrying value again grows to a larger number over here. Okay, so ending carrying value, column D, is previous carrying value plus the amortization. We keep adding that amortization. But what do you think this number is going to grow to be if I keep adding the amortization? Now for this exercise, they just asked us to finish the first 3 lines of the schedule, which we did. And they've asked us to do the journal entries on January 1st, June 30th, and December 31st, all in the first year. We've done that. Now, it really is important that you just understand how to do 3 lines and the rest of it is simple. The rest of it is simple because in Excel, I can, since I put formulas all the way through over here, I can just drag these cells down and I'll have all the information for the entire 40 payments. Now, I've already done that. So let me just go ahead and highlight it and show you what happens at the very end. That's important. Again, the amount I borrowed, let me highlight this over here. The amount I borrowed is 500,000. That's my liability, 500,000. In my books, the carrying value is principal minus the discount. That's the carrying value, how much cash you received. Each time you amortize the discount is being written off, so carrying value keeps increasing. Now, if you go all the way down to the very end, what do we see over here? This is obviously with rounding off, we are off by $2, but it comes up to $500,000. So at the very end, what you will see is there is going to be no discount remaining. It's all written off and your carrying value is exactly the same as the principal, $500,000. Now, this is assuming I wait all the way until the end. I make 40 interest payments and then return the full $500,000. Now, in the first exercise, they didn't go into the retirement of bonds. They just asked us to do the first 3 rows. This is all we were asked to do. Just the first 3 rows, just this, and do the first 3 entries. Now, let's take a look at exercise 9-19. It's essentially the same information. Now they're telling us using an amortization schedule, show that the bonds have a carrying value of $458,633 on December 31st, 2025. So we stopped on December 31st, 2024. So they're basically telling us do 2 more interest payments and see if you come up with this number. Well, we've already done that calculation over here. And if you look at this number, which they're asking us to take a look at over here, again, with rounding, 458,632.53, or you can make it, increase it to 3, 458,633. And yeah, that is the number we have over here. Okay. Now in part 2, they're telling us, if the market interest rate drops to 7%, remember we offered 9%. At that time, the market rate was 10%. Now they're telling us the market rate drops to 7%. And we decide that we want to pay off these bonds because now we can refinance and we can get a lower interest rate. But it's going to cost me $601,452 in order to retire the bonds. So they want me to retire the bonds on December 31st, 2025. Retire the bonds basically means repay the money. Okay. So I'll go ahead and do the 2 interest payments. Always, when you're retiring bonds, you have to pay interest and do any amortization all the way up to the point of when you want to repay the bonds. Now I have these two lines over here. I pulled all the information from there, and it's just plugging it into my journal entry. Now that I'm done with that, I can do my final journal entry where I'm going to repay the bonds. So again, let's take a look. When I issued the bonds payable was a debit balance, and discount on bonds payable is a credit and discount on bonds payable is debit. So you need to flip those in order to close those accounts. Bonds payable has to be debit. That one is easy. It's $500,000. I'll leave one line and then I'll write discount on bonds payable, cash. I know how much cash I'm paying. I know that because they gave it to me in the problem. 601,452. So that's the amount of cash I'm paying. So that part is easy. Now, the only challenge we have is we have to find out how much we have in the discount on bonds payable. That's still remaining with me. And that one is really easy. If I know what my ending carrying value is, the difference between the principal and the ending carrying value, that tells me how much of discount on bonds payable is still in my books. It's unamortized. I was still waiting to amortize it. Remember all the remaining interest payments that I've amortized? So that number, the discount on bonds payable, is 41,367.47. Once again, that is $500,000 minus this number over here, the carrying value that you have after you make that interest payment. Now, once you're done with this, you will see you're short on the debit side. So this is the last entry we are making. And at this point of time, we are saying we have loss on early retirement. So once again, let me explain this over here. When you issued the bonds at a discount, this was basically a loss. You are writing off the loss over the life of the bonds. As you are making interest payments, you're writing them off. But if you're going to pay them off right now, after just 4 interest payments, if you're going to settle the debt, you have all this loss that you need to recognize. We had said we are not recognizing the loss in our books right now. We keep recognizing a little at a time. Well, now you got to recognize all of it. In addition, you paid more money. You paid 500,000 the face value. I'm paying 601. So I'm paying a whole lot more to settle the debt. That is also a loss, which is this total amount of loss I'm showing. So this loss on retirement has 2 parts. Loss on early retirement has 2 parts. The first one is the unamortized discount. The second part is the extra cash I'm paying. The cash that is more than the face value. That and the unamortized discount together gives me the total loss on early retirement. Happens quite often, especially when these market interest rates jump up and down. Companies' financial circumstances change. They may be able to get a much better interest rate, just like we do in our personal life, refinancing debt. Companies also refinance debt. And this is probably one of those situations where the company is refinancing the debt. So I hope this helps you with your homework assignment.